Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Vampires. The Nosferatu complain a lot. Oh, how they moan that they will never be accepted by kindred society because of their monstrous visages. The Nosferatu do whine that they have it the worst of all clans, of all vampires. Perhaps these Nosferatu are forgetting the Caitiff when they say this. Perhaps these Nosferatu are forgetting that many of them have made the title of prince. Many of them have held lofty positions within Camarilla, Sabbat and Anarchs all. The Caitiff are what we are looking at today. The clanless, the orphans, the wastrels, the runts, the runoff, the sons and daughters without fathers, sireless vampires. Vampires without clan. Many dismiss the Caitiff as an errant bloodline, vampires who were merely rejected as soon as they were embraced, and therefore no different to, let's say, a Malkavian whose sire decided to go off on a moonlight flit shortly after turning him. That isn't actually the case. And many other vampires fear the Caitiff because of the prophecies of Gehenna within the Book of Nod. The prophecies of Gehenna stating, "And you will know these last times by the time of thin blood, which will mark vampires that cannot beget. You will know them by the clanless, who will come to rule." Many elder vampires, the paranoid ones, like to think that the Caitiff are these clanless, that they will make every attempt to crush the old institution and rule in their place. Now, many Camarilla, of course, will say, there's no way a runt like that orphan over there will ever reach any position of power. And yet, let us examine Cairo just briefly. Mukhtar Bey, one Caitiff, is the Prince of Cairo, one of the most powerful and cosmopolitan cities in these modern nights. Somehow he is able to stave off the Setites and the Assamites. He is also able to prevent the city from falling to the Camarilla or the Sabbat, holding it as an independent bastion in a sea of turmoil. Mukhtar Bey, a Caitiff, a vampire without a sire or a clan. So who's to say that being clanless disallows you from reaching giddy heights? Mukhtar Bey not only has this political clout, but he also has a vast array of disciplines at his fingertips. I have spoken with Mukhtar, and he has exhibited many of these powers. Powers that no runoff of one particular clan should have. For certain, the Setites would like to claim him as one of their own, and yet, somehow, he is able to wield darkness. He is able to commune with the dead. Somehow he is able to manipulate the mind, as well as draw attention from others. Somehow he has the basic physical disciplines that are spread across many clans. Somehow Mukhtar Bey is more versatile, some would say diluted, than most any other vampire. Now, he is no powerhouse. He is not someone who would stand much of a chance against a seasoned elder if there was a straight fight, if there ever existed such a thing. And yet, he has the capacity to learn disciplines that would otherwise be forbidden to any other clan. Don't you think that is fascinating, Childer? The idea that the blood, the vitae, can dilute to such a degree that disciplines no longer become proprietary toward one clan, that the Tzimisce are not the only clan with access to vicissitude, or the Tremere and their secrets of thaumaturgy somehow start manifesting in unschooled clanless vampires. Now let's go to the root of the Caitiff, perhaps, which is very difficult to track down. Most vampires, as I say, would say that Caitiff are, for instance, generated when a Toreador, as an example, falls in love with a mortal being, stalks him or her for some time, and eventually embraces, because he's so obsessed with this ripe young thing. At the point of embrace, the Toreador's senses return to him. He realises the prince never gave permission for this embrace. Shit, I'm going to meet final death if I get caught doing this. And so the Toreador, so in love with the newly embraced neonate, does not destroy the neonate, but instead the Toreador flees into the night. Thinks, if this neonate has what it takes to survive, then good for him, but I'm not claiming him. So the neonate groggily wakes up, starving of blood. Most kindred would tell you, well, that Caitiff would start to manifest the presence of the Toreador, the aspect of the Toreador, the celerity of the Toreador. Not so. This Caitiff may well manifest any number of disciplines. This isn't a surefire thing. The random embrace, the hurried embrace, the abandoned child does not always become Caitiff, and I would say 9 out of 10 times he or she does not. This vampire may well appear as a Toreador neonate with access to the Toreador disciplines, and eventually, despite his lack of, well, mentor, shall we say, this child may well rise to become an important harpy about town, or keeper of Elysium. In other occasions, however, this vampire does become Caitiff. The first recorded instance of Caitiff appearing en masse was during one of the vast Sabbat Camarilla Wars in the New World in the 19th century. I sometimes forget the city that it occurred in, but for the sake of argument we'll say it was New York City, for that city has been fought over more often than many others in these modern nights. The Sabbat, as was their custom, mass embraced. They needed the foot soldiers. The Camarilla, as a rarity, did the same thing. They were both desperate to keep hold of New Amsterdam, this treasure, this jewel on the east coast of America, this passage into the Americas. Now, that's nothing unusual. You would expect lots of very weak-blooded Tzimisce, La Sombra, and on the other side Bruja, Gangrel, Malkavian. But a great many, more than a 1 out of 10, probably 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, of these embraces were manifesting powers that their sires never had access to. A Caitiff awoke, a shovelhead, dug himself out of the ground, was able to manipulate things as if he were a snake. He was able to commune with the dead, and yet he was able to run faster than a speeding bullet. Serpentis, necromancy, and celerity are no disciplines for one clan. Another one awoke in a dumpster, not in the 19th century, awoke in a ditch, shall we say, and was able to not only command someone by looking into their eyes that they should run, he was also able to make the blood of someone boil just by looking at them. He was also able to have the strength of 10 men pumping through his arms. Dominate and thaumaturgy are Tremere disciplines, but potence? And so, this was appearing more and more. And for the most part, the Sabbat and the Camarilla both saw these things, these creatures, these Caitiff, as boons. They were great foot soldiers to use in this war, because no sooner did they pop up, they did their thing, then they were struck down. No one had to worry about them. But Caitiff were surviving here and there. And then it started to make kindred worry, because many elders are familiar with the Book of Nod and the prophecies of Gehenna, and whether they write them off or not, this was the first time that the clanless began to rise and show themselves with the force that they truly could be. It is said that Radu Bistri, the cardinal of the Sabbat, one of whom, Tzimisce, of great age and great respect, a diplomat in fact, which is rare for the clan, met with a member of the Camarilla inner circle. Now, it is definitely not recorded which member of the inner circle it is, but my informants tell me that it was Hardstadt of Clan Ventru, and they met on neutral territory and discussed what was to be done with these clanless vampires. Who can say what was agreed? Because the Sabbat and Camarilla war raged just as fiercely once their parley was over. However, Caitiff did not appear again for another 30 years. 3 whole decades, not one Caitiff recorded as being embraced within that time. Now, is it possible that the Tremere worked a thaumaturgical ritual that prevented Caitiff from appearing? Or perhaps it is the case that so afraid of the prophecies of Gehenna were the clans Zemisi and Ventru, so afraid were the Sabbat and the Camarilla, that whenever one of these Caitiff appeared, they were stamped down immediately. They were crushed, they were exsanguinated, they were exposed to the sun because of the threat that they were perceived to be. And somehow, a few of them slipped the leash 3 decades later, and so now we have Caitiff. Caitiff that can embrace other humans and make them into Caitiff as well on rare occasions. I do point out that that's rare. Caitiff are shunned, Caitiff are hated, Caitiff are feared. Caitiff have no place in the final night if you ask any of the preeminent clans. Now, some clans do not care whether you are full blood or not, but you can't impose a stereotype. There are many Nosferatu that fear the Caitiff, despite as many being accepting of these outcasts. The same goes for the Gangrel, the Malkavians, the La Sombra, the Zemisi. Some people see these clanless as tools. Some of them see them as heralds and follow them into the breach. Others, perhaps rightly, look at what Mukhtar Bey has achieved, fear these clanless. Are they a new generation of vampires that are going to rise up and crush the old institutions? The Sabbat have a different way of treating clanless in these nights. While the Caitiff and the Anarchs and the Camarilla will never, ever, at least without rare occasion, reach the dizzy heights of Mukhtar Bey, in the Sabbats they have their own clan. A vampire by the name of Joseph Panda, within the 1950s in one of the Sabbat civil wars, agreed to side with one of the sides of the Sabbat, providing all that he and his clanless allies were represented as a full-blooded clan within the Sabbat. Many of the Court of Blood, the La Sombra, were up in arms. No, we will not do this. But then others, the Loyalists, began to point out the Sabbat was not founded on clans alone. The Sabbat was founded on the principles of freedom. If these clanless runts want to be recognised as a clan, then fine, let them do it. Let them pursue their own freedom without the yoke of elders being pressed down on them. Surely if we use them, we are using them no better or worse than the elders were during the War of Princes, and hence the Anarch revolt in the first place. The ultra-conservatives of the Sabbat even came out in force to support the Pandas and their claim to titlement, and sure enough the Pandas, on the side that they fought, won in the Sabbat civil war, and so the Pandas are now recognised as a clan in their own right within the Sabbat. The Caitiff can only look on jealously, because the Camarilla will never afford them such a station. Perhaps we must wonder why that is. The Camarilla need allies just as much as the Sabbat. What is it preventing the Camarilla, who fastidiously deny the existence of antediluvians, the existence of Gehenna, the existence of thin-blooded vampires, what is it that prevents them from recognising Caitiff titlement? As I'm not in the Camarilla, I couldn't tell you. These are interesting nights for the full clans and for the clanless. The world is at the fingertips of these offspring, these orphans. If one Caitiff can seize Cairo, what could an entire clan worth of them do? This isn't even going into the subject of thin-blooded Caitiff, or even thin-blooded other clans. The strange rumours of some vampires, and I point out these are strange rumours, that some of these vampires are able to walk in the sun, some of them are able to ingest food, some of them are able to give birth. The strangest rumour of all, that Dampier exist, and that the start of all of this chaos was the Caitiff. That maybe when Radu and Hajstadt agreed, perhaps, that we should eliminate all of them, disavow our sect politics, the The Caitiff need destroying. Perhaps, if that line had been stuck to, Gehenna would not be just around the corner, as it is right now.